You're watching Fugitive Redeye, and welcome to another episode of Life of Redeye, which is part of Redeye Raw, because Redeye Raw has a couple of different sub-series for whatever fucking reason, because that's how I did it. Second Redeye Raw of the day, but hey, as you saw, today I'm talking about my experience in college. I'm going to tell you the college story, the part of my life where I was in college. So, I graduated from high school back in 2012, and I took a couple of years off before going to college. During those couple years, I had a couple of jobs. I delivered newspapers, which I've already talked about on Tales from the Drive-Thru. Obviously, I had the job at McDonald's, which I still had when I started college. And that's also the genesis of Tales from the Drive-Thru was me telling the stories of working at McDonald's. But after a while, I did enroll in college. And I'm not going to say which college. It is a community college, I'll say that much. I've never been to university, and I don't currently attend college, and I went for a total of 4 semesters to college. So, the first semester, the classes I took were, the fuck was that one called? There was this one, I can't remember what it was called, but it was basically a class that teaches you how to do college. Like, you did, like, reading assignments and homework and stuff like that, right? But it was mainly to teach you how college works and how to use all the different things at your disposal. And everything's done through like this online service where you submit assignments and stuff. I'm pretty sure it's a universal one that multiple colleges use, but I'm actually not going to mention what it was called, just in case it's like a local thing. I don't want to give it away. But yeah, so it teaches you how to use that, how to submit stuff, how to use their library resources, you know, where the library... Like, it was basically just college the course. And you get credit for it, obviously. And you're required to take that or a similar class, so got that out of the way first. During that same semester, I also took an English class. I think it was English 1010. Don't quote me on that, I'm not 100% sure. Because I took a bunch of English classes there. Not in the first semester, mind you. I took more later on. Because well, not a bunch, but I took a couple, because my major was English, or writing. Although technically... Anyway, point is... so I took an English class where I would write my assignments. So basically with that, we had to do a project that went throughout the whole school year. First, we had to write our opinion piece based solely on our own thoughts, and we had to basically argue a point and have a thesis. So I did mine on censorship, because I'm very anti-censorship, and it originally started out with me talking about, in the first one that I wrote, about why I'm against censorship, how I don't think video game violence leads to real violence, things like that. I actually read this paper on my channel in my censorship rant, which I think is still in my playlist for rants. So there you go. But then the second part of the paper, I had to take someone else in my life that I knew and write about them and their views. So I picked someone who disagreed with me on a lot of things. Someone I'm actually very close to now, who I actually wasn't at the time. And I wrote a paper that way, based on them and their views and some things there. I'm not going to get too into detail with that one, because, as I said, the person who I wrote about is someone who I'm actually really close to now. But then the third paper we had to write was one based on actual research and corroborating stuff with studies and things like that. So I did that too. In that class, I had to use MLA format. If you don't know, that's like the kind of standard for typing. You have to double space it. You have to put your name, class period, all that stuff at the top. And then you have to use Times New Roman, and you don't variate the text. It's a format for typing. I also had a math class the first semester, which wasn't even in, like, the regular building. The math class was in, like, the gym building. And it was just, like, one of the few classrooms in that building. So I had to actually run over to that building from the other one. And granted, there was multiple buildings on campus. The English class I had was in the administration building. In fact, all 3 of those were in different buildings, and I just had 3 classes the first semester. And the math class was pretty simple stuff. I think it was just like advanced algebra. Here's the thing, I used to be really good at math in high school. When I got to college, not so much. Admittedly, I was probably a little bit behind in math. And math was actually a reason why I didn't continue college as much and actually really pissed me off, but I'll get to that when I get to the second semester. So yeah, during this first semester, I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. Because I actually do like school. I kind of like the structure to it. It gives me something to do to kill time and pass the day. And it makes me feel like I'm advancing myself in some way, even if that's all superficial and isn't actually doing anything. I actually do miss going to college in a sense, but I don't know if I plan on going back, and I'll get to that later. But yeah, those were my classes the first semester, and it was pretty standard stuff. I'd go in early in the morning for, I think, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Or no, it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday is when I did the one that teaches you how to do college. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays I did math, and English I think I did Monday through Thursday or something like that. I don't remember for sure, because this was like 5 years ago at this point. Because I think I did this semester in like 2015, and then the last semester I did was in 2018, so the second semester, the classes I took 4 classes, one of which I absolutely despise, which we'll get to. But I took a history class, American history after 1776. And it was a lot of stuff about like the Industrial Revolution, stuff like that, but it was a writing class. And I actually had the teacher in that class tell me that my thesis wasn't very good. When I did some stuff towards my final project, and that actually really pissed me off too. That's another thing that pisses me off about writing classes, is they're very subjective, and he told me that my thesis inherently wasn't very good, because, so what it was is we learned about things like, so we read these books like The Dust Bowl and the Haymarket, and so we learned about like all these struggles between business monopolies and the working class, right? Stuff like that. And my thesis was, everything's a cycle. What happens is you get companies getting too crazy, starting monopolies and abusing the working class. Then the government comes in and starts regulating, but then they over-regulate, and so then they have to start loosening the regulations because they're pissing everybody off. And then later on, because the regulation's been toned back, they have monopolies rise up again, and then they have to start regulating it. That's what I was saying in my thesis. And granted, back then, my political views and ideology were still kind of forming, but just with how blatant some of the politics in college were, actually pushed me more away from the stuff they were preaching in college, but we'll get to that later. But don't worry, I'm not going to get super political. This isn't going to be one of those. I will bring up that one teacher that I have before, though. But that's the 4th semester. But anyway, in these, other than that class, right, another one I had during the second semester was another English class, but this one we did our assignments as groups, so we were split up into groups of 3, and I worked with 2 other people, and basically what we had to do was do the same thing, get a thesis, argue a point, and stuff like that. And here's the thing that I liked, is these first couple semesters, there was no politics at all, and I loved that. Incidentally, I didn't mention this before, but I passed all my classes with A's and B's the first semester. Second semester, I passed all but one of them, which we'll get to, because I took 2 English classes the second semester, in addition to my history class. So, one English class I did great in, got an A. And that one was just, again, there's the one where we were working in groups, and we had to come up with a group project. And what I argued in that was media bias, because at the time, a big issue at the time was the Confederate flag, right? So I was writing my thesis on the fact that the media is very biased in the way they cover it, and I think that helped me shape, even more so, my anti-censorship stand, right? Was going like, the media says all this, but then these people are saying all this, and then like they're twisting this and that, like, right? So media narratives, right? Big thing. So I wrote about that. And I had to do research on that. I had to pull up studies and graphs. What those studies primarily entailed was how much people trust the media, which, as you can imagine, people don't typically trust the media nowadays. This was also back in 2015 as well, by the way. This was, again, leading up to, this was like 5 years ago. So it was, it was a while ago. Sorry, I don't know where I'm going. I lost my train of thought there. But the next year... not the next year. The third class I had was the other English class, which I only had Fridays. And, fuck that teacher. He was one of those pretentious hipster fuckers that they have to think that they're so goddamn special they can't do shit normally. So, rather than using the online infrastructure that literally every other fucking teacher used, this guy's like, no, I use my own website, and we only use that one for submitting assignments. So, all the resources you normally use, yeah, throw that out the fucking window. Here's my website. Go to it because I'm superior, because I'm special. But he also just wasn't very approachable. He wasn't very specific on what criteria he wanted with his assignments. And he didn't use grading in a traditional sense. He had a grading contract, which on the surface sounds okay, because he's like, as long as you do the work, quote-unquote, you're guaranteed a B in the class. And then if you go above and beyond, you'll get an A. But I turned in my assignment, and he told me it was wrong and didn't give me credit for it. Even though he didn't go into what was wrong. He's like, this isn't formatted correctly. It's like, okay, what format do you want? No answer. So I gave up on this fucker. I just quit going to that class and eventually just withdrew from it. And then I also had a math class, and the math class was early in the morning, and it was more of like advancing a step above the one that I took the previous semester. And this one I passed, but I got a C minus because I got 60% for a C minus, something like that. No, 60% is a D. 70%, that's what it was. I got 70% for a C minus. And I needed 73% to advance to the next math class. So even though I passed, I didn't pass well enough to fucking advance. And even though I'm not taking a math degree, math is fucking required for any degree you get. So it's like, I passed, but not enough. So it's like a check minus, oh, you did bad. Even though I did, I got 73%, and admittedly, a lot of the problem with that, I think, was just I was too tired, because I was working and doing I was working full-time and taking 4 classes, and again, I was still working fast food at the time, so it was very draining on me, and, like, getting up in the morning was difficult, and, literally, if I would have turned in one more homework assignment, because I missed a bunch of homework assignments, I am fully at fault for not passing well enough, I will fully admit that. But I think it's stupid that even though I passed, I didn't pass well enough. So yeah, I missed a few homework assignments. If I'd have turned in just one more and done, like, okay on it, I would have passed. But no. Well, I would have passed more, like, enough. But yeah, so for these first 2 semesters, I was still liking the school atmosphere, but the math stuff pissed me off. And that one hipster teacher pissed me off, and I quit his class. During these first 2 semesters, what I would do between classes is I would read Violence Jack on my iPod on the Manga Storm app, which was an app that was actually paid for. So it was my brother's iPod originally. He bought the app, and then I had it and used it afterward, because he gave it to me later on after he got a better one. So I would read Violence Jack between classes, and that's where I first read Violence Jack, was during these first 2 semesters, and I loved it. That's another thing I loved about college, was just sitting in my car between classes on breaks and reading through Violence Jack. That was fucking great. I loved that. Because obviously I'd already seen the OVAs like a year or 2 before I started college, and so I was really having a good time. So despite the stress of the classes, those first 2 semesters were fun. The second semester was definitely worse than the first and pissed me off. In fact, the 2 things that pissed me off were, again, not passing well enough in the math and having to withdraw from an English class. Those 2 things pissed me off a lot, so I almost didn't return. In fact, I think I took another semester off in the middle of there. Like, instead of returning after that, I just was like, fuck it, I'm not going back this time. And then, like, a couple semesters later, I'm like, you know what, I'm going back. And so I went back later, and this was my 3rd semester. Now, my 3rd semester was at a different campus, but it was the same, like, it was owned by the same school, whole big thing, right? Like, it's got multiple locations. So, when I was at that other campus, I was only taking 1 class for my 3rd semester. And that 1 class was a multimedia/digital media class. And it's where I was learning how to do, what's it called? Adobe Premiere, Photoshop, and Adobe Fireworks. I was learning to do editing. And I really liked that class. That class was fun, it was great, and I passed it with flying colors. It was an amazing class, and I loved every second of it. But that was literally it. That was the only class I was taking that semester. It was a 3-hour class, though. I think I only went once or twice a week. I can't remember. I think it was only once a week. But it was a 3-hour class. And it was real fun. I enjoyed it. And it was a very nice step back from the 4 stressful, annoying classes I had the previous semester. I think during this 3rd semester, I was already working in the call center, taking, tech support calls over the phone. So I was down to working part-time, but getting paid the same amount I was full-time, because fast food doesn't pay very well. Those McDonald's checks only go so far. But I was getting paid just as much part-time at the call center as I was full-time working fast food. But the call center was a shitty job, and I'm glad I got out of that. But that's a story for Tales from the Drive-Thru, right? So, after that 3rd semester, which was much easier, I took a 4th semester, which was fine. So in the 4th semester, I took what did I take? In the 4th semester, I took another English class, but I want to say I took and biology. I took English and biology the 4th semester. And during that 4th semester, the English class was where I got that teacher that I don't care for, because all she did was push her political ideology. Here's the thing, when you get people like that, they are easy as fuck to pass their class, because all you have to do is regurgitate the same shit they've been spewing when you're on your final project. Legitimately. I actually put effort into my critique of the book Beloved, which I already shit on this channel before, and I got like a C on it, or maybe it was a B. I didn't say anything outright confrontational, because I'm just gonna shut up and just pass the class. Which, at this point, I had started to form my opinions for sure as they are now. I was already set in, this shit is bullshit. But yeah, this teacher, she started preaching a bunch of shit about whiteness and, all this other disgusting SJW politics that was just, ew. And that really, really pushed me over the... I was already against just how fucking soft everyone was getting. But this pushed me even further. I'm like, yeah, okay, I realize this is actually a big problem now. But, here's the thing. When I wrote that Beloved thing, I actually tried hard on it. My final project, we were writing about Watchmen. And I love Watchmen. The comic, it was great. Not the HBO show. That thing's garbage. And I think the movie's actually underrated. I think the movie's pretty good. But I was reading the comic and had to do a project on that, right? The entire time we were doing that project, the teacher kept talking about this thing, saying that there's no such thing as objective truth, which is retarded, but okay. So, the whole thing was about knowing and finding truth. Basically, she was saying that, as Ozymandias was actually not a bad guy, and, well... That's one thing I do like about Watchmen, is it can be morally ambiguous. He still killed millions of people. I don't think that justifies what he did, just because he had a motive, and he thought he would save lives because of it. But Watchmen was very symbolic of, the Cold War and stuff, so I actually think that's great. I think it was a great story. Even though the author's kind of wonky now. Although he also wrote V for Vendetta, if I'm not mistaken, and I really liked that, too, although I think that its message has also been bastardized nowadays. Especially since with the movie, they make it very clear that V is supposed to be the good guy. Whereas in the book, it's not that obvious. In the comic, it shows both sides, and V is still seen as this evil, terroristic threat from the other side. So I like the nuance in the comic way more than I like the movie, too, don't get me wrong. But anyway, I caught on real quick that she was making it a theme that truth is subjective and not objective, which I think is just bullshit. Now, I think some things... there are nuances and there are things that you got to try to figure out, because obviously, when there's two sides to a story, one side's going to prop themselves up, the other's going to prop themselves up, and they're each going to put each other down. That's how it works. And the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. But I can argue, okay, maybe there is a such thing as subjective truth versus objective truth, for sure. But she was saying, objective truth doesn't exist. So, I literally just regurgitated the shit out of that and half-assed it. Guess what? 100% on the assignment. Flying remarks. tons of comments saying how fucking good I did from her. That was a half-assed just regurgitation of all the shit she had been saying the whole time we were reading it. That was the easiest shit in the world. Because when I wrote my honest opinion of Beloved, and granted I toned it down, I wasn't as obvious as I was in my video talking about it. When I actually gave, my actual opinion, I got like a B or a C. But here, I just shit out whatever she said and fucking aced the class. And here's the thing. I still enjoyed elements of that class. Beloved wasn't boring, and it was definitely interesting to read. I liked reading Watchmen as an assignment. That was pretty cool. I liked all the poetry we covered earlier on, but as soon as she started cramming politics down my throat is when I started to really turn against it. Now, as I said, the other class I was taking that semester was biology, and that was a great class. I liked biology. It was very simplistic. It was objective. It wasn't bullshit. And that's the thing, is I came to realize a lot of English classes were very subjective kind of bullshit. And English was what I was going for, because here's the thing, I want to be a writer. I want to get my books published. I do. I'll fully admit that. And I've tried writing, and writing is hard. And I was like, maybe if I go to school, it'll be easier. But ultimately, I don't feel like that's the case. I don't feel like it's gotten any easier for me because of attending school. And ultimately, I don't think that it's actually, given me any additional advantage in the career field or helped me get on a path. I'm a very kind of lost person right now, I'm not going to lie. I'm still trying to figure shit out. At the very least, I have my job. I have a roof over my head. I got my YouTube as an outlet. And I got my hobbies. So, I mean, I'm fine. I'm content with my life, but I definitely still need to figure out what my plans are for the future. But yeah, biology was fun. And in fact, when I was in biology class, we'd actually get breaks in the middle of class. That was like one of the few classes we did that, actually. We'd get a couple of different breaks in the class. And when we would get breaks, you know what I'd do? I'd read Mazinger Z. That's right, that's where I read the Mazinger Z manga, was in my biology class on breaks. So that was really fun, too. Yeah, I do miss college to an extent, for sure. But I feel like it was kind of a waste of time, and I didn't get a degree. I didn't get a certificate. I was going to keep going, actually. I was going to at least get an associate's degree, right? But then, at the end of last year, or no, at the beginning of last year, some shit happened in my personal life where basically 2019 became the worst year of my life. And I was like, you know what, with all this shit going on, I'm not going to go back to school. And because I didn't go back, I had time to think about it, and I'm like, what am I really accomplishing with going? Because here's the thing, if I wanted to advance and actually get the degree, I'd have to retake math or test into a higher math class. Either way, that was frustrating, and in fact, I couldn't just retake it because I had let it go for too long, because I had waited. And again, there were some semesters, like, even though I went 4 semesters, they weren't back-to-back. There were a couple of years in between a couple of them. So yeah, the fall semester of 2018 was the last time I went to college. And once 2019 hit me, I stopped going, and then 2019 behind the scenes, I was very stressed out. I didn't show it in the videos, but I definitely was. And then at the end of the year, I was like, I need to take a break, which is why the beginning of 2020, I was completely gone from the channel for like the first 3 months or something like that. And I thought about going back this year too, but I've never really thrived in an online environment, which is primarily what colleges are doing right now. And I don't want to have to deal with all the COVID restrictions too, so it's like that's more incentive for me not to go back, especially since I don't have a sense of direction. And some of the programs I was going through to help me pay for it, I would have to reapply, and I may not get accepted for that again. So that was kind of frustrating because, I let that lapse because they were trying to get me going for the next semester and get shit figured out. But unfortunately, because of all the shit in my personal life, I just ignored them and never responded to them, to the point where they just closed my file and told me that they were. So I'll say this. College might be right for some people, but I certainly think that we overhype it in society nowadays. I had fun, And I don't regret going per se, because I think it was a good part of my life experience. And it helped me have a sense of, like, I was, achieving something and moving up in life. Even if that was a fake sense, it did make me feel a sense of purpose that I don't really have right now. Right now, I'm just kind of wandering, stumbling through life. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy with my life. I am. I think I'm happier with my life now than I was back when I was in college. And this year has certainly been a lot better than last year. And I've come to look at the brighter side of things. But I think that if you don't know what you're doing with college, like you're just like, I'm going to go to college because it'll help me in the world. It might not. That's the thing, is college, everyone acts like it's important to go to, and everyone acts like it's going to help you in life. But that's not always true. If you know what you're doing, and you specifically have a career in mind with college, then I say fucking go for it. But if you don't, I would say think about it harder before you waste either your time, or if you get financial aid, your time and money, and then if you get financial aid, at the very least your time and, the taxpayers' money, because that's how financial aid typically works. There's also scholarships and other options too, for sure, but it's like, even if you're not paying for it, you're still wasting time if you don't know what you're doing with it. And I would say if you're going for a career, trade schools are probably a better bet. Or work your way up a career ladder from a job. That's another great way to do it. I absolutely don't have all the answers, because right now I'm just at a fairly decent paying, but also fairly low level job with benefits. Don't get me wrong, I get benefits, so that's nice. But it's not where I want to be my whole life. And I still have a lot of figuring out to do myself. Now, I would recommend that, if you're thinking about college, definitely put some thought into it, because it's not for everyone. And I've come to realize that it's probably not for me. I'm not saying I'll never go back. If I have a sense of purpose that I feel like it would help me in a career, then I might. But I also don't want to put up with a lot of the college culture as it's arisen, because luckily I started, right before that culture had really started. It was already there, but before it became so invasive. So, it's only progressively gotten worse with each semester I was there, and I certainly noticed that. So, yeah, I definitely think it's something to think about if you're thinking about going. But anyway, that's all I really have to say today. I hope you've enjoyed this little piece of my past. I actually have lots of ideas for future Life of Red Eyes, where I want to talk about different elements of my past. I might talk about high school. I'll talk about elementary school. If I talk about elementary school, 5th and 6th grade gets really interesting. Because I was kind of a crazy fucker back then. So maybe I'll talk about that at some point too. I'm on the fence of how much information about myself I want to give out. Obviously, there are certain details I never will, just because certain elements of my life are private that I don't give out on YouTube. Things like, my romantic life, girlfriends, things like that I had in high school and whatnot. Because, frankly, that's my business. But some things I'll definitely share. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of Red Eye, a sub-series of Red Eye Raw. Toodles.